Israel has unleashed a new wave of deadly airstrikes across Gaza, despite global calls for a ceasefire. Israeli officials say they destroyed crucial Hamas tunnels and ravaged several homes of militant commanders during some of the heaviest fighting we've seen since the latest conflict erupted just last week. Around 200 Palestinians have been killed, including dozens of innocent children and families. Harrowing video shows rescue workers pulling survivors from the rubble after Israeli airstrikes flattened several buildings in Gaza. Palestinians say they're on the brink of a major humanitarian crisis amid the relentless bloodshed.
الخدمات صارت مقطوعة كتير، يعني الكهرباء انقطعت والمياه انقطعت والنت والتلفونات كانوا انقطع عشان القصف الإسرائيلي والصهيوني على قطاع غزة استهدف المنطقة عندنا، والله أعلم عند وقت تيجي الكهرباء والمياه والنت والحاجات هذه، واحنا بنعاني كتير اصلا لما نتصل عليهم، بنعاني كتير لما يجوا، يعني قصة.
الواقع الفلسطيني اصلا مدمر ومتأزم من 15 سنة، فالآن يزيد هذه الأزمة وتزيد هذه المعاناة على الشعب الفلسطيني، ولا يجد الشعب الفلسطيني حل. هذه مأساة إنسانية بامتياز.
Palestinians continue to be caught in the crossfire as Israel ramps up airstrikes and its military presence around Gaza. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu slammed Hamas and accused the group of trying to wipe Israel off the planet during an interview with Face the Nation yesterday.
Their goal is to destroy Israel. They're not interested in any kind of coexistence, any kind of the kind of peace, the 4 peace treaties that I've made with Arab countries that are changing the Middle East. They're trying everything in their power to avoid the path of peace and reconciliation. So I think any objective observer understands that Hamas is out to destroy the state of Israel.
So for more on this, let's bring in Dr. Yara Hawari. She is a senior policy analyst for Al-Shabaka, an independent Palestinian think tank, and she is with us now from Ramallah in the West Bank. Thank you so much for joining us. I think I just want to start off with what you are seeing where you are right now in the West Bank. What has the morning been like for you? What's been going on over the past week?
I mean, it's incredibly devastating to watch what's happening, particularly in Gaza, as Israel continues to bomb it indiscriminately, using, of course, very, very advanced and precise weapons to do so. Let's not forget that Gaza is actually one of the most densely packed areas in the world, and the death toll from those Israeli bombardments is now over 200 people, including a lot of children. And just watching those images that you played in your report of these kids being pulled from the rubble is incredibly distressing. And we know from reports on the ground that despite what the Israeli army is reporting, that many strikes have actually been done so without warning, without giving the residents an opportunity to evacuate. So people have actually been crushed under the rubble of their own homes. And emergency services, you know, they've been attempting to save as many people as possible, but Israel has also bombed a huge chunk of the roads, including the roads leading to the main hospital in Gaza. So, you know, the situation in Gaza is really, really bad. And I think unless you're actually there in Gaza, you cannot convey how bad it is. And Palestinians in the West Bank and elsewhere can only, you know, read the messages and speak to our friends and family members in Gaza to even begin to comprehend what's going on. And the situation elsewhere is also pretty awful. In Jerusalem, the situation of ethnic cleansing continues. The Sheikh Jarrah neighborhood is under a tight Israeli police lockdown with a checkpoint at the entrance of the neighborhood where only Palestinian residents are allowed in. And yet Israeli illegal armed settlers from all over are allowed into the neighborhood, and they're provoking and assaulting the Palestinians there with the support of the Israeli police. So the situation is incredibly tense, it's incredibly worrying and stressful.
And Doctor, you've said that the violence that we are seeing today from Israel, you've called it ethnic cleansing, and you've called it a continuation of settler colonialism. Explain to our audience what you mean by that, using that kind of language, what those words mean.
Thank you so much for asking that question. I think it's very important that these words and these terminologies start entering the mainstream lexicon, because they reflect the reality on the ground, and it's something that Palestinians have been saying for decades, that this continuous violence in Palestine the colonization of Palestinian land, the displacement of literally hundreds of thousands of Palestinians from their homes, the total destruction of communities and villages, punitive military actions, bombardment, siege, military occupation. All of this is part of a settler colonial structure. And Israel is attempting to ethnically cleanse the land of Palestinians. That is very clear from Jerusalem to Haifa to Gaza. And it's very important to stress that this isn't, a historical context. This is actually an ongoing process of erasure that's happening now. And it is, these terms are reflective of the lived realities of Palestinians.
A number of countries consider Hamas a terrorist organization, or at least certainly the military arm of Hamas, but it has gained increasing support among Palestinians. Can you talk to me and help us understand the conditions that Palestinians are living under that would make them willing to support Hamas?
I think it's important to note first that Israel has been occupying Gaza and ethnically cleansing Palestine years before Hamas actually came into existence. So Israel conveniently uses this pretext of Hamas whenever it wants to dissolve itself of responsibility, of war crimes. And in this case, the Hamas rockets are the retaliation, not the instigation. And yet, time and time again, Israel blames Hamas for being the instigator. It collectively punishes Gaza for Hamas. The fact of the reality is that Hamas is the ruling regime in Gaza, whether people like it or not. And so they run the hospitals, they run the municipal services. So when Israel says that it is bombing Hamas infrastructure, it's actually bombing civilian infrastructure. And I think people don't realize that. What if Hamas was to say, for example, that it is bombing or targeting military infrastructure in Israel? There is there is a double standard that is being held, and the use of Hamas as this pretext to collectively punish all Palestinians is something that Israel does time and time again.
Doctor, are you surprised? What is your reaction to the fact that, when we talk about reaction or the response from the international community, generally it means the United States and some of the big players, Russia, China, the Security Council. But I'm sort of curious, unlike 2014, when the response from other Arab countries was much stronger, it appears, at least to us here now in the United States, that it's much more muted this time around. What do you make of that? Why are we not hearing more from Jordan, from King Abdullah? Is it because now Israel has put into place these new diplomatic agreements with many of these countries, and that the plight of the Palestinians has become secondary in the minds of many of these leaders in the countries where, 10 years ago or back in 2014, they would have been much more vocal, and there would have been denunciations delivered on the floor of the UN and perhaps even from podiums within their own countries. We haven't really seen that this time around.
Yeah, and I think you're right in your analysis there. I mean, I think the support for the Palestinian people and the Palestinian struggle has always been very nominal from the Arab regimes. They might have sort of expressed solidarity or condemnation of Israeli practices, but in reality, in material practice, nothing has come of that. Indeed, we know that for a long time, many Arab regimes have had under-the-table dealings and agreements with Israel, even before these latest normalization agreements. And we have to be very clear that these normalization agreements isn't something new, right? It's something that's been going on, and they're not peace deals as Netanyahu would portray them, but they're actually agreements involving weapons sharing, involving information sharing. And it's incredibly worrying that regimes in the Middle East, including Israel, who have terrible human rights records and terrible records on repressing politics domestically, are all signing agreements to share weapons and to share security information. For me, this is something that's incredibly frightening and something that wasn't picked up at all by the international community.
And Doctor, before we let you go, just to focus in a little bit more on that, the response, you may also have to describe for our audience the difference between the Palestinian Authority and Fatah and Hamas, and the conflict that has existed between those two main political parties for quite some time. You know, the nuance of what is happening in that part of the world is very complicated, even for people who live there or who are Palestinian or Israeli. Is there at any point during this present conflict that it strikes you that Fatah has also been, I know that they're talking to the Israelis, I know that they're talking to, that the Palestinian Authority is talking to President Biden, but what has been the response from Ramallah, and is there at any point a sense that since the Palestinian Authority and Hamas are rivals, that they could be doing more, but they're not? If you get the gist of my question.
Yeah, and I think it's a very important question. The Palestinian Authority has been incredibly absent, notably absent. Activists and people on the streets have commented about this, and that's because the Palestinian Authority is interested in the status quo, because the status quo maintains their position of power. And when I talk about the Palestinian Authority, of course, I'm including in that Fatah, which is the ruling party, which really sort of subsumes Palestinian politics. And lest we not forget that the Palestinian Authority is not a representative body, it is not an accountable body. They haven't had elections for over a decade and a half. They're well past their electoral mandate, and yet they continue to be propped up by the international community because they are seen to be a sort of a stabilizing status quo force. And I think the rivalry or the split between Fatah and Hamas is only being entrenched. But I would stress that, you know, Palestinian people are a politically divided people like any other people all over the world, and so this isn't something that's particularly of note in the Palestinian context. What I would say is that this latest round of violence towards the Palestinians has seen incredible shows of unity amongst the Palestinian people themselves outside of those political party frameworks. We've seen Palestinians protest in solidarity with each other in Jerusalem, within the communities, in the Palestinian communities in Israel, in the West Bank. And this has been really an unprecedented show of solidarity. And I think that is something that the Palestinian political leadership really do fear.
Dr. Yara Hawari, really important context for us and our viewers. Thank you so much for sharing it with us. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having me on.